As woo-woo as it can sound sometimes, or new agey about a little child within you, I think it's pretty obvious that you have one. And if you grew up in a, dysfunctional family, a family that wasn't very open about emotions and feelings and encouragement and all those other things, there's this little child that never had a chance to grow up, never had a chance to be a child, a kid. And this may hit home for you. Maybe it doesn't, that's very possible, but just hear me out here. That when you were growing up, that little kid in you wasn't encouraged, wasn't really brought out, it wasn't like, oh, hey, you're crying, you're sad, hey, let's talk about it, it's okay to be sad. Or if you're laughing and having a good time, like, oh, it's so great that you're laughing and having a great time, I love that. I mean, there are people who literally, like, their parents will look at them and say, what are you crying about? I'll give you something to cry about. Or there's nothing to be sad about. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm sad. Gosh, maybe I'm crazy. My parents just told me I'm not sad when I am sad. Or if you're, heaven forbid, if you're having a good time, you're joking and laughing and that you're giggling and having a great time, and a parent or adult says, all right, that's enough having fun, right? Well, time to get serious. So whether you want to call it a little child or something else doesn't really matter. The point is that when you were younger, you didn't have a chance to just grow up to have a normal childhood. And I would guess that most people don't have a normal childhood, whatever normal is. But if you ever grew up and you weren't encouraged, if you weren't allowed to be yourself, if you weren't allowed to have feelings, then you know what I'm talking about. You go back to when you were a little kid and where you're playing and all that stuff. Do you remember what your dreams were, the things you wanted to do, the things that made you happy, the things you wanted to try? Because in many times, those things were just like beaten out of you or crushed out of you. And I'm not talking about physically necessarily. Maybe sadly, if you grew up in a home where you were physically abused, that's part of it. But when you're in a family of people who, I brought up before about being crabs in a bucket, how when you try to get outside of your family dynamic, when you try to kind of get away, the crabs in the bucket are going to try and pull you right back down again, right? So when you were a child, and especially if you're like a black sheep where you had really cool ideas and stuff you wanted to do and you're original, you're unique, man, those guys are going to drag you right back down again because it scares people. It scares people when you become your own self, your own, you use the gifts that God gave you. And that scares other people because when they see you, they have no excuses for not doing it. So you're almost a danger or a threat to them. So, okay, I got off topic a little bit. So let's go back to being a little child. So it may be very well that sadly, you may have come into a family that didn't even want you. And that may not even have been spoken to you. But there was a sense, there was a feeling. It's like, hey, mom and dad have, they're overwhelmed with the children they have. And, oh, one more is just too much. Or, hey, we're stressed financially. We just can't afford another child. Or mommy or daddy wanted a boy and not a girl. Or they wanted a girl and not a boy. So all these factors come around. So all of a sudden you're part of this family where you're like, wow, does anyone really want me? Do they love me? Do they care about me? And as you grew up, and especially if you were a lost child where you were just quiet, you just played by yourself, you went outside by yourself, you did stuff by yourself because not being noticed was how you survived in that family dynamic. If you were just a good kid, if you were just quiet and stayed on mommy and daddy's way, then everything was fine. But now that you're getting older, whether you are still in that family of origin, whether you've left the family, whether you're an adult, whether you're much older, 40s, 50s, 60s plus, early 20s, whatever you are. Here's the secret: is if you've got to learn how to reparent yourself. And this has been so hard for me because what does it look like to parent yourself in a way that's going to help you overcome a lot of the things you're experiencing, especially if you many times you get into sadness or depression or discouragement. How do you then look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, I'm going to take care of this little kid inside of me. I know exactly what to do. So it starts out as, okay, I got to take care of this little kid. Now, what What did he or she not get growing up that I can provide to that person? And a lot of that starts with just self compassion. A lot of that starts with you looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? I've made it this far. I'm, again, whatever your age is. And if you look back at, and especially little pictures of yourself, I encourage you to find pictures of yourself as a little child and almost say to that picture, it's like, look, we've made it. I've gotten this far. No matter how hard things seem to be as you grow up, I'm living proof. I'm here. I've made it. Okay. So that's one great way to put your foot in the door and say, look, I've made it. I can parent you. I can help you, get to where I am right now. And your job then for that little kid inside is to talk nice to yourself. I'll bet you have a hard time talking nice to yourself. I mean, think about the times during the day where you're just berating yourself. You're hearing the voices of perhaps parents, adults, teachers, other people when you were growing up. You might hear things like, who do you think you are? You can't do that. Or you might as well give up. This isn't going to work. Or, one of a million things. Just this inner critic, this voice that just tells you what you can't do, what you can't be. And, quit trying to be something special, be like everybody else. And it could be this constant barrage in your head that is pushing you down and basically keeping where you are. We're back to that, the crabs in a bucket, right? So to start, it gets into reparenting yourself. It's figuring out what a good parent is, or even just saying, what would I have liked to have heard when I was that age? For me, a lot of times it was just encouragement. I remember a time it's probably 10 or 11. I was down in my, the family basement, and my dad had a little workshop down there, and I had an interest in electronic projects, soldering and putting stuff together. And I remember one day just sitting there working and just getting frustrated because it's like I didn't have any help. And I distinctly remember my father coming downstairs while I was there working, and he'd kind of reach over me or around me to get whatever he needed and then leave. And unless my memory fails me, I don't remember him ever once looking at me and say, hey, Mark, what are you working on? Hey, do you need some help? Hey, that looks exciting. What is that? Showing any kind of curiosity or interest of any kind. I don't remember that. Maybe it happened. I don't remember it ever happening. And there was a time where I was working on a project and I just couldn't get it to work. It made this really weird sound when I pressed the button. And I'll never forget, it was like a Friday night. My parents had another couple over there playing cards and everything. And I was actually sitting on the stairs crying because to me, I dared not go to my father and ask for help. I didn't know what else to do. So I was there crying, just wanting badly for someone to take notice of me and to offer me a hand. As a little kid, you're powerless in so many ways. So that's just a very vivid memory I have back in the past of just really needing as a kid to get encouragement, to get some help, to get some mentoring, to get some guidance. And a lot of times that was just missing. So we're back to reparenting yourself. So it's like, okay, so go back in time and think about that. It's like, imagine yourself going up to your younger self and saying, hey, I see you're working on something. Hey, you look frustrated. Hey, can we do this together? Or just, that comfort that you always wanted. So take seriously that there is a child within you. And, like the scripture said, there's a couple of accounts where the little children are going toward Jesus and his disciples kind of shoo them away or trying to, push them away. And Jesus is like, no, let the children come to me. Because, heaven is for the children. It's for the childlike. So if you can't find this child within you, if you can't find this childlike joy and confidence, it means there's something there you have to work on. But I can't tell you how amazing it is to actually go in and encourage that person at different ages. Now, one great exercise is using your non-dominant hand, writing a question or talking to your younger child with your dominant hand, and then as the little child, respond with the non-dominant hand. And again, before you just say, hey, that's dumb, that's stupid, I'm not even going to try it, Go into your room, close the door, don't tell anyone you're doing it if that helps, and just try it. Say, hey, little Mark, little Bob, little Cindy, little Sarah, how are you feeling right now? And you'd be blown away at the responses you get and how you get in touch with a part of you that just wants so badly to be heard and to be helped. So give it a try. I highly recommend, again, John Bradshaw, Melody Beattie, Beattie, and I know she passed away a few years ago, but Lucia Capacchione, Lucia, Lucia, last name is Capacchione or something like that. But they're dealing a lot with, and especially Lucia deals a lot with those exercises, drawing pictures, using that other side of the brain that you don't use all that much to do that. So I highly recommend it, but get in touch with that person inside of you, that little kid who is just filled with joy and laughter and excitement and is passionate about life. You know, it may have been stomped out of you at some point. It happens. Go back to that time. Find out that time when that little kid just wants to come out and wants to play and wants to be happy and wants to be joyful, and give it a shot and see what happens. Because if you are having a tough time with life, maybe in general, again, sadness, depression, discouragement, frustration, try this exercise. You owe it to yourself. And again, I highly recommend, if you need to, go see a therapist, especially a Catholic therapist, somebody who can keep you grounded in your faith and guide you along this journey to doing that. Because I got to tell you, it is amazing when you do get in touch with that person, because all of a sudden you start to uncover things you haven't even remembered or thought of for many, many years. And all of a sudden you start getting a little bit of a smile on your face. Your heart feels a little happier, a little more joyful, as you realize that no matter what happened in your past, you can do something about it. People around you are going to be miserable. People around you are going to try and stop you. And I'm guessing those are people who aren't even going to try to kind of look in the mirror and see what kind of things they need to deal with. It's much easier for them to point their finger at you and say what you've got to do. Do this for yourself. And again, don't tell anyone you're doing it if you don't want to. In fact, I highly recommend you don't. Go somewhere, go in private, go in quiet, get some paper out, some pencils, pens, whatever, and give it a shot. You have nothing to lose. And quite honestly, you have a lot to gain. You get in touch with that little kid, and all of a sudden you find a new spark, a new joy, a new happiness. So give it a shot. Please try. Look on Amazon, get the books. If you're looking for therapist, I can't tell you where to go, wherever you go to find one. And I also highly recommend 2 12-step groups if you're interested. One is Adult Children of Alcoholics, and they amended that name to be Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Highly recommend you give that a shot. Also, Codependence Anonymous is another group you may want to try, because I can't tell you how helpful it is to actually go to be around other people who are struggling just as you are, but you're in a safe place where people can have these conversations, where they can touch on very vulnerable topics, and you can be there in great confidence that these people aren't going to, be going to plaster all your private thoughts out to the world, because they're all in the same boat. In fact, there's a huge relief knowing that you're not alone, that there's other people out there who can help you, who are on the same journey with you. So please try some of these resources, give it a shot. You've got nothing to lose but your sadness and discouragement and depression, all the bad stuff. So, okay, let's toss the junk, give it a shot. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.